Hello everyone, today we continue learning programming, and today we'll talk about Redis, what's that, how we can use it, and why we need to use Redis. So let's start. First of all, I want to say that I want to focus more on other external things, not only in Python, because until today I have only talked about internal things like built-in libraries, Python, Python problems, Python solutions, and so on, because I really didn't see a lot of videos on YouTube that really talk or get deep into Python. But now what I want to do, I want to focus on other things as well. For example, Redis, SQL databases, automation, and other cool things about IT. Of course, still the main topic of my channel is Python, and I'll never move too far from Python, but still I want to focus on other things as well. And what we will do today? Today I'll explain what is Redis, how we can use it, and we'll create a simple Python script to interact with our Redis application. Okay, so let's start. These words are the most essential for us today. So Redis is an open source, so we can literally see it's called on GitHub. Let's go right here. It's written in C, so as you can see, yeah, in-memory data structure store. Use this database, cache, and message worker. Redis provides data structures, and we will not talk about other data structures right now because they are the topic of other videos. But now, Redis is in-memory data structure store. What does that mean? In normal databases like SQL, really text files, NoSQL databases, or any other kind of database, because Redis is used as database, we store our data on hard drives. And that's great because we don't want to lose our data. For example, if you reboot your computer, you still want your database to be your data to be inside of your database. That's how it works, and that's great. But in some applications, we need to work with tons of data per second, per even milliseconds, and that's where databases cannot handle all the load that come in towards them. That's because hard drives are very slow. So hard drive itself is really slow because we really physically write data on a disk. And because of that, we can use in-memory data structure store. What does that mean? That means that our data is inside of the memory. That means that our data is stored in RAM. RAM is extremely fast when we compare it to hard drives, but RAM does not store the data persistently, so there is no persistence in our RAM. If I reboot my computer, I'll lose all of my data in RAM because I don't need it. It's a very fast, quick data that we need to access a lot of times during our session. And that's why Redis is very different from other databases, like normal databases that everybody used. Of course, there are other things that are very similar to Redis, like memcached and others. So memcached is the most popular, so I think you know about it. But Redis stores its data in memory. And now, let us try to work with Redis, create some things, delete some things, and so on. You can click on try free, or no, you don't need to click right here. You need to go redis.io website, and then there is download Redis 6.2.5, the latest stable version. Okay, but now I'll open my folder, so I have my Redis installed already, so data F, Redis right here. Okay, so we have some things in here. You download just a simple archive, so tar.gz, if you can see in the left bottom corner, and you just need to extract all your files into some folder, and you will see these files as well. So as you can see, redisconf is just a configuration file for our Redis, and I'll not talk about it today. Let's go to Redis CLI and Redis server. So let's open Redis server, and as you can see, now our server started. It says warning no config file specified, but as far as I know, it will use the config inside of its own directory, so that redisconf file. And server started, everything is okay. My Redis version is a little bit outdated, I'll update it after that video, but it will not interrupt any of our codes or anything today. Okay, so I am opening Redis CLI, another exe file, and inside of that file, what I can see that we are connected to localhost 6379. That's the default port for Redis, and as you can see, it says 000 clients connected, but once I connected, 1 client connected, and how many bytes are in use. Okay, so now what we can do? We can set a key. So Redis is a key value database. What does it mean? We have a key and we have a value. Imagine that you create a variable inside of Python. So you just literally say name equals value. But of course in Redis we cannot do that because we need to write commands that are exclusive for Redis. For example, set command, set name value. So name equals value is an equivalent in Python, and we can write it in Redis with set name white space value. Now let's run it, and as you can see it says okay. So what we did now? We created a new value, a new variable inside of our Redis, a new key value pair. So name is the key and value is the value of our variable. Now if I write get name, I'll get the value of my name key. So as you can see it says value, and it's in a string because it's just easier for Redis to store everything in a string. For example, if I write set I don't know, var1 s10, it will still store that var1 inside of a string. That's how it works. So get command gets you the value of the key that you provided. But set command sets or updates. We can literally update it. So name updated value like that. And let's get name again. It either creates or updates the value for your key. That's how it works. So if I write get name to, for example, the variable that does not exist, it will give me new. So new, it's an equivalent of none in Python. It's just nothing. It does not exist because that's how it works in Redis. So we don't have anything inside of here. These are the most basic commands, and if you want to delete your key, what you can do is use delete from name. So delete from name, and it says 1 because it deleted one variable. We can literally say name a b c like that, and it will delete all of the names that I provided. In our case, it will delete 0 variables because we don't have any of these variables now. Okay, so set creates or updates the value, get returns you the value, and delete deletes the variable. That's actually it. But now let's talk about expire. So expire is another cool thing in Redis, which helps you to delete your variable at the end of some timer. For example, what if you need to check that your program, or you need to create a timer, and you need to check that that timer or a variable exists for 60 seconds only. Not for 61, not for 59, for 60 seconds only. What you can do is you can create a variable, for example, set, I don't know, timer 1, variable as true, for example. After that, what you can do is use expire command. So expire command helps you to set the expiration time for your variable. In our case, expire timer 1 and, for example, 30. So what does that mean? Now, when I press enter, my timer variable will start its own counter, and after 30 seconds, it will delete itself. Let's run it. Expire, as you can see, it says 1, and let's get our timer again, or timer 1. It's now, as you can see now, I can get it. So it says true, 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 everything's alright. And if I write TTL, so time to live, what's the amount of seconds that our variable will live for? If I write TTL from timer 1, so again, it just shows us the expiration, the current expiration time. You will see it's 6, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0, and -1. So as you saw, time to live, so TTL of our timer decreased. And if I use get timer 1 right now, we'll receive new, because there is no variable timer now right now, because we deleted it with our expire command. We said that our timer 1 will only live for 30 seconds, and that's how it actually works. Now we don't have any variable inside of our Redis which is called timer 1. That's actually how it works. So as you can see, we have -1 as the TTL, and if we set a variable, for example, name to s10, its TTL will be -1 by default. So -1 indicates that either your variable does not exist, even if I write name3, it says -1. Either that your variable is deleted, does not exist, or it does not have expiration time. That's how it works. Okay, so that's pretty useful because now you can really set timers, and you, in a lot of cases, you know that, okay, the timer is really showing me the real time, because your program, your Python program can just crash. Your server can just crash. But if you have a great Redis cluster enabled, then you can literally never lose your data and have real working timers in your programs. That's how it works. But still, now our Redis only works in RAM, so I haven't saved anything on my hard drive yet. That means that if I remove my Redis server right now, I will not have any keys. But now, before I do that, let me show you command keys. So keys wildcard. It's a wildcard command, and as you can see, we have two keys, name2 and var1. So we can literally write anything that we want. For example, name2, and it will give us keys name2. So keys command name2, and it will give us all of the keys that are named name2. But if you want to really filter or see your keys, then you can put wildcard. And what does it mean? Your key starts with name2, and other thing is not important, so it starts with name2. Or you have name2 inside of your key. Or if you put wildcard, you have a key. So all the keys are inside of that keys. You will find all the keys, or Redis will return all the keys. You will write keys from all. That's how it works. So as you can see, 1 and 2, name1, var1. But now let's remove our server. What happens? Well, first of all, I think, yeah, nothing happens with our server, could not connect. So as you can see, it's not connected. Let's remove it, let's reconnect. Let's go to Redis. So right here, and right here. Redis. So now let's restart our Redis server. Okay, everything works with it. And let's start our Redis CLI. If I'll show you the keys again, empty set or list, we don't have nothing, because we stored these keys only in RAM. And that's why when we removed our server, we deleted all the keys, because they were stored inside of that Redis server RAM. That's actually how it works, and that's the main difference between normal databases. Of course, there are a lot of differences, but that's the most crucial one between normal databases and Redis. So yeah, that's how it works. And again, there are three common ways to use Redis as a database. So just what I showed you as a database. You can store anything that you want inside of Redis. Cache, not anything, but not the data that is not as important as the data that you need to store in your SQL or NoSQL on your hard drive. Okay, then you can use it as cache. So cache, it's like, let me create paint file and I'll show you. For example, we have our client C, and we have our web server, so VS. Then we have our database, which is a triangle, DB, like that. So what do we have here? We have database, web server, and a client. If the client wants to ask for the list of his friends, for example, our web server will connect to the database, will retrieve the information from the hard drive, and then it will return to the client the information about his users or whatever. But what if tons of clients get their users every time? So, for example, we have 10,000 requests at in 1 second. What happens is we have a lot of calls to the database. And what if one client wants to, for example, just press F5, F5, F5 and update the page constantly? We will constantly go inside of the database and we will constantly look for the users. That's bad. I think you know why, because we get or we make a lot of database calls. But what if we have another layer, which is called Redis? And there are a lot of ways to set up that configuration, but I'll show you the most common one. So before our web server, our web server will connect to the database and ask for some data, it will connect to the Redis. And of course, there are a lot of ways. For example, you can connect it first, then write to Redis, you can write to Redis, and if there is no data, you can get or return nothing. A lot of ways. But what if our web server connects to the Redis, and if there is a key that says, here are your friends, so friends key, for example, we can return it directly to the user. So from web server to the user, from Redis to web server to the user, like that. But if there is no key, friends, for that specific user, what we can do is go to DB. So Redis returns us new, we go to DB, we get all of our users once, and after that we write them to Redis. So next time the user wants to make a call, for example, again, he presses F5. Instead of going to DB, we will firstly check for that information in Redis, and since we already made the call to the DB, we can literally return it right like that and like that, without any extensive DB calls. And Redis, of course, there will be a load or high load even to Redis, but since it stores its data inside of RAM, it will be not as impactful as a lot of calls with DB, because Redis can store or can work with 1 million entries at a time, 1 million records at a time. I heard it somewhere, but that's how it works. Okay, so let's don't save it. And message broker really works the same. So message broker is like when you have, let me again open my paint. You, for example, have your client, your web server, your and your Redis, like that. Your Redis, your client, and your web server. So web server and client. What if your client says, get all of my requests, my SQL requests, or get all of my friends since 2015, for example? What we'll do? We'll go to the web server, and if we will execute all of that work, for example, we need to construct a PDF file with 10,000 pages. If we will do all of that work inside of that web server code, inside of the web server itself, first of all, our client will wait forever because HTTP call needs some request or some response. Our client requested something and we need a response. But since we spent 30 times or 30 minutes constructing that PDF file, we cannot return anything to the client, and his web browser will probably drop the connection. So it will not receive, or he or she will not receive his PDF file ever. But what if, instead of using web server directly, we'll have another application, microservice application, I don't know, anything that you want, which is called PPP. And instead of executing the work directly, we'll say, execute PPP, you need to execute that work. You need to, for example, get all of the requests for that user since 2015 and construct a PDF file. Of course, that program, that server or whatever will have some work to do. But web server, instead of just directly creating a PDF inside of it, will move or delegate that work to a PPP program. And it will return a response, for example, wait for 30 minutes, or we will notify you when your PDF is ready, like that. But how we can really get and translate the information from the web server to PPP? We can use Redis. So Redis will work as a message broker. So we send a message to Redis, and PPP listens to Redis, to specific Redis messages. And when we have that message, PPP gets that message, executes some work, again, forms a PDF file, and when the PDF file is ready, in 30 minutes, in 1 hour, in 10 hours, it does not matter. PPP will send some information. There are a lot of ways on how you can set up that, but it will send some information, maybe a path to the file, maybe file data, but it's not recommended, to the Redis. And after that, Redis will move, or our web application will get that information from the Redis and will send a new notification to the client. For example, your invoice is ready, your PDF file is ready. That's what message brokers are all about, and Redis can be one of them, because again, we use RAM. It's pretty fast, and that's how it works. Now let's go to YouTube project and let's write some Redis code inside of here. So I will import Redis variable or Redis module, and Redis module should be installed with pip install Redis, like that. And it's called Redis-pi. So that's how it works. Redis PI, it's the name, but you should install it with Redis. Just pip install Redis. Let's check if I have that module. Yeah, requirement already satisfied. So now, when you install that Redis, what you need to do is create a Redis client. And we create it by using Redis.redis. Redis.redis. And we need to provide three. Actually, as you can see, there are a lot of variables, but we need to provide three things. First of all, where our Redis works. In our case, it's localhost. Port, in our case, is 6379. And DB. In our case, it will be 0. So and as you saw, we have these things inside of Redis by default, and there are a lot of other variables, but I want to provide them so you just really see that we connect to that specific Redis instance. And what I want to tell you, that what's DB? I will tell you about DB. Database or DB in Redis is just like a different store. A DB like we use them in SQL. For example, DB 0, or let me just write 0, has some keys, so set A, B, C. DB number 1 will not have these keys, so it's just a level of isolation between different databases. That's actually it. And by default we use DB number 0, and let's use it right now. Before we start doing anything, we need to close our Redis connection, because why do we need to store or to have one open connection if we don't use our Redis anymore? Always close your connections or use context managers, but I will not do that today. And what we need to do is use Redis client.set. So actually we can use any function or any command from Redis as it is written in Redis. The only difference is delete, because in Python we have del by default and we cannot name functions with del, so only delete. For example, get, set, I don't know, expire, anything that you want. Also, as you can see, there is expire add, so when you want your variable to expire, if you don't want to provide seconds but want to provide the date instead of that. But let's first of all, and there is keys, as you can see, let's first of all set a new variable. Variable name equals var1, value equals test value. Let's run it. As you can see, we are connecting to the Redis right now. As you can see, accepted our client closed connection. That's how it works. And now we should have var1 variable inside of our Redis. Let's go to room, to data f, to Redis, and the Redis CLI right here. So let's get that variable with keys O, and as you can see, we have var1. Let's get its value, get var1, test value. Everything works. Now let's get that variable inside of our Python code. Redis client.get, for example, var1. Let's print it. Let's run it. And as you can see, test value. These are bytes in Python, but it's just easier for Redis to store bytes instead of, again, it stores strings inside of it, but that module returns bytes. Actually, Redis stores bytes, but I think strings are more useful for a lot of people, or are more familiar for a lot of people are more familiar with strings. That's what I wanted to say. Okay, so Redis client.get returns us test value. That's how it works. But now let's delete our test value after we are finished with it. As you can see, you can provide names, so you can literally provide var1, var2, and so on. But now I will just only provide var1. Let's run it. And as you can see, we get test value, but if I use keys from all, I'll not receive anything because I deleted my var1. Okay, so that's everything that I wanted to tell you today. There is a lot of things you need to know about Redis if you want to really work with it. For example, how you can use it with other frameworks, other modules, a lot of other commands in Redis, how you can use, for example, sets, lists, and so on, how to work with sentinels, how to set up a Redis cluster, because one Redis can be easily shut down. And yeah, that's how it actually works. So thank you for the watching and good luck.